Thank you, everyone, for coming to see the film and for sticking around for this Q&A. We are very fortunate to have the entire key creative team here. My name is Michael Cuomo. I'm one of the producers of the film, and we're going to ask a few questions of everyone here that we've prepared, and then we also have a few questions from you, so thank you for those. I'd like to start with our writer, director, producer, editor, Jessica Thompson, Jessica M. Thompson. And I know the answer to this, but I think all of you are probably curious. It's a two-part question, and first, what inspired you to write the script? I remember reading it and being just blown away, and I suppose that's why we're all sitting here. But what inspired you to write it, and also how important was it for you, particularly with this film, to have a female-led crew?
So I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to these people because I feel like you know the answer to these questions. So I feel I'd been long confused, confounded, disturbed by the way the media was presenting rape and sexual assault in film and television. I'm sure that a lot of you here are probably having the same kind of confusion. And this has been going on for, I've been aware of it for at least 5, 6, 7 years of, oh, why did they choose to shoot that like that? And, why are we presenting it from the rapist's perspective? Quite often we'd shoot the actual rape scene from the rapist's perspective. I was like, why would we want to go in that direction? We're sexualizing the victim or re-victimizing the victim. And then quite often showing the story, either not even paying any kind of respect to the victim and following her story and where that went to. I never saw the aftermath. I never just sat with her and saw what happened. Or would go on to this kind of wild rape revenge fantasy, which, is maybe satisfying to see, but is not very realistic. Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, films like that, which I think are great films, but it just wasn't real. Or courtroom dramas where it's tied up neatly in a bow that she gets justice in some way. And that's just 99% of the cases. It's not the truth. So I had that mulling in the back of my mind. And then this unfortunately happened to a friend of mine when she was jogging in broad daylight on the Upper East Side. And that, brought it very close to home. And then seeing how she, as a lawyer, as a very high profile human rights lawyer, went back to work and very much like Bonnie kind of denied that it had any impact on her and tried to just almost try to click back into everyday life. And I saw, it unravel slowly into her relationships with her boyfriend, with her work, with her life. And I spoke to, and also hearing, the amount of evidence that they collect and how it, I didn't know anything about, the prophylaxis medications and how that you have to take that every day. It's like a daily reminder of what has happened to you and your trauma. And I just said to her, I haven't seen this film. I think it's a really important story to tell. And would you trust me telling your story anonymously? So the story is very loosely based on her and her experience. After that, I then went on to research. I met with many different, rape survivors, social workers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, to make sure that I was telling the story as accurately as possible. And that was very important to me. And then once again, I felt that a lot of the reason why we were not seeing the portrayal fairly and seeing it in an honest and realistic way was largely because we were having men write, direct, and DP these films. And I just felt that it just seemed like a conflict. It just didn't seem to translate to very honest storytelling. In some regards, it kind of turned into these fantasy montages or sexualization for male consumption or something like that. So I knew adamantly and fiercely that I would have a woman-led crew for that exact purpose, to empower my actor and empower the victims and the survivors out there, and tell that story in a unique and refreshing way. I hope that translates on screen. So,
yeah. So my next question is for our phenomenal lead actress, Stephanie Beatriz. So Steph, since we are at SAG and we're in a room of...
I have not paid my dues yet. Did you all get that email when they're like, your dues are due? I'm like, oh, right, yes.
We were supposed to keep that on the DL.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If you could just tell us a bit how you came to the project,
Yes.
and also what your way in to Bonnie was, what your process was, and within that, what were some of your biggest challenges approaching the role?
Well, I was looking for something else to do on, I'm on a series, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and someone's ringtone. And I was looking for a project to do in the in-between time, so like on our hiatus, basically. I'll just wait for you to get it. You can answer it.
Answer it in front of us.
Yeah, I was looking for something to do on the hiatus time, and because I started my career mostly in theater, so I had been doing regional theater a lot before I moved to LA, and then once I hit LA, the shift was pretty drastic in the type of material that I was doing. I was doing like a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of American classics, and so most of the roles that I were getting were pretty dramatic. And then Brooklyn Nine-Nine came along, and it was very opposite that. It's just really funny show, and so I wanted to sort of push myself to do a project that was challenging, and that what I really wanted was something that when I read on the page, I thought, like, I don't know if I could do it. That's what I really wanted, because I wanted to push and stretch. And then I read the script, and within like the first 2 pages, first of all, the character description immediately says Bonnie, 30s, an architect, Latina. And I was like, oh, that's so nice to see on the page. That doesn't happen often enough. It doesn't happen. And then I sort of like flipped through to see like, well, is there gonna be like some weird, like something weird because she's Latina? And the answer was no. The answer was literally just that this writer-director wanted a woman of color in the lead of her film, and then decided specifically she wanted a Latina. So that was really exciting to me just within like the first 3 pages. And then reading the actual script, and this is part of the reason I did it, as I also, like many of us do, have a good friend who is a victim of sexual assault. She's an incest survivor, and I've been witness to her story sort of for the last 6 years that we've been friends. And in the last 6 years, she has done an immense amount of growth, but it's also been really painful to watch, because not unlike Bonnie, she's been really defensive at times. She's closed herself off. She had to go through a lot to get to the place where she is right now. And when I was reading it, I thought of her immediately, and then I texted her and said, like, look, this is probably going to be very triggering for you, but can you look at this script that I'm thinking about doing? I think it's on to something. I see you in the script. And she said, okay, I'll read it. And then she texted me back like maybe 2 hours later and was like, you have to do this movie. I've never seen my story told. And I was like, oh, that's so painful to hear, because she's such a good friend. And I thought, like, the world just thinks these women and men are invisible, you know, that they don't, that part of the story doesn't matter, that it's just like, let's talk about the rape part, the exciting part, you know, which is like such a gross way to frame it. And in a lot of ways, she was the way in, and, you know, like so many of us, me too, like, so many of us have had experiences where we feel powerless and hypersexualized, and just like, we want to just, Wanda Sykes has that great comedy routine where she talks about wishing that she could just take her pussy off and leave it at home. You know, which is like, that would be great. I would love to jog at 10 o'clock at night by myself, but I can't. I can't do that. I live in a universe in which I'm not able to do that, because I lack a certain amount of power. And that is because we live in rape culture. I think those were all the questions that you asked, the way in, why I was inspired to do it, and how
Any challenges that you came up against as an actor?
The whole
in
film, like,
Right.
I think that one of the main challenges for me, well, one of the things I found so challenging was the relationship between Bonnie and Matt was really hard, because there were so many times where it felt so real to my own experiences, like her defensiveness, her, you know, inability to allow somebody else all the way in, her rejection of his, you know, ultimately it's caring that he's trying to give her, and she cannot give into that. At that time, she's unable, right? She just doesn't have the tools. And like those moments, even more than the rape scene, although I found the rape scene immensely challenging, but sometimes even those moments, like the scene where they break up, was awful to do like over and over. And we had this photograph that we had taken like when we were on the High Line. Remember, we took a walk on the High Line and we took some selfies because Jess was like, we need some set dressing. And there was a photo of them like on the dresser, and I can see it every time I watch it in the movie. I think of this, like I'm turned around, my back is to the camera, and I remember standing at that sort of dresser thing and looking at the photograph and thinking about my own relationships. And we've all been there where like you're just fighting tooth and nail with someone that you used to love. You know, you used to just think like, this is the person for me, this is it, this is the relationship forever. And you're like in the middle of dismantling it because you can no longer hold it together for whatever reason. And like that scene was really challenging, really challenging.
For everyone on set.
Yeah, I think so.
We had our sound recordist have to break every time to
Oh,
grab
yeah.
a tissue, a set
Odin,
tissue,
he was
and
so
take a sip. We're
sweet.
like, okay, have a break, Odin.
It was
But
really
yeah.
sweet. Yeah. Yeah, but like, yeah, those were the main challenges. And obviously I think the rape scene was really challenging in an interesting and really vivid way.
Absolutely. So Michael Stahl David, who plays Matt, our male lead. So Michael, I'm interested to hear what attracted you to the project. You know, some of us probably know you all the way back to Cloverfield, and then you've done a lot of theater here in the city, and have played characters that I would say are probably a lot different than Matt, perhaps a bit stronger than Matt. And I'm just wondering, like, for you, what was the way in to this character, and what really attracted you to wanting to do the film?
Yeah, I know we have a couple people who haven't seen the movie. So, or wait, is your boyfriend here? He wants to. I just want him to close his ears when I start talking about plot stuff. Okay, so I just had never read a script that was as emotionally. I just hadn't heard this story. I'd never seen this story, so that struck me right away. It felt very emotionally intelligent. When they got to the sex scene, the first sex scene, and she says, "Come on, fuck me for real," I was like, "Whoa." I had never considered that side of it. What's it like to have sex with your partner for the first time after being assaulted? So that was, I thought, super interesting and just not a simplistic story. There was just layers there. And I was just compelled. I remember I sort of was offered the film, and I don't get offered a lot of things. I usually have to audition. And so when I am offered, it's usually pretty bad. So I was expecting that. I was like, okay, this is probably bad. And so I was just like, I'll read it on my phone, just like 15 pages, let's see. And then I was just like, I remember finishing it, like wiping my face and just sending an email like, yeah, I'm in, let's do it. And then telling my agents, like, I'm doing this movie, by the way. So yeah.
Cool.
And I should just say that I cast from instinct a lot. So when, you know, I always had Stephanie in my top 3, and she was in mind when I was even writing the film. And then
Top 3.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
The other 2 weren't available, so you know.
I started writing this 3 years ago, baby.
True.
And then Michael, well, it was very funny because I was kind of you go through kind of like a list of like, who do you see for this role? And then he just kept appearing in my vicinity. So he lives near me in Brooklyn, and Michael Cuomo bumped into him, and then a friend went on a few dates with him. And then there was and everyone kept saying, oh, have you heard of this guy, Michael Stahl? And I was like, oh my gosh, why is the world telling me?
Michael was also in Love and Air Sex, and I was working with a producer who was a lead producer on Love and Air Sex. I was like,
yeah,
Michael.
and it was just like, okay, the world is telling me that I need to. So I'd already cast Steph, and so that was how Michael came about. And then it was so funny because Carlo and I had seen Conrad in Here Lies Love, and we were like, I was like, keep that guy in mind for some future role. Maybe he should just play the guy who you've based, your best friend on in the film. And then what was so funny is Carlo bumped into him at like I want to say it was like gay Asian men in film or something really specific.
It was the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Association.
Every year I get a gay award. I don't know
That's
if you
right.
know that. And this was the first one of many. And he came up to me and was like, "Oh yeah, this sounds cool." Yeah. No, I thought like I'm an openly gay man and actor and whatever, and years of being the best friend to all of these amazing women in my life. It was just like such an honor to be able to. I mean, I'm already playing a gay character on TV, so I thought, but the script was so good, and I love Stephanie so much. So the scenes that we shot were so much fun, and it really is kind of like, for me, a love letter to all of the women that have been there for me through coming out and like, all of our friendships. Yeah.
Awesome. Kathy, the lovely Kathy Curtin. So Kathy, you played an integral role in this film getting made, in that you were the first actor attached to the film, and I think you know that. And your attachment definitely opened up a lot of doors for the film and raised the profile of a relatively small independent film as we were, rolling it out to agents and so forth. So. First of all, thank you for believing in all of us. Okay. And, similar to the questions that have been asked, what about the script attracted you, and how was it different, if at all, from other roles that you had played on stage or screen?
It was really funny because, I don't know, I was kind of crazy busy, and I think maybe Michael wrote my bio for this or something, and he said at the end of the bio, he goes, "She says yes to all indie films."
I did write that.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. And and I am a firm believer in independent film, and I'm a firm believer in anything you can do at any time to any independent film, to anyone who's making an independent film, you should show up. And I've been very blessed to be a part of some amazing projects, and I think it's really, really important as an actor. With independent filmmakers, I only had a lovely scene in this movie, but I remember these guys meeting them in coffee shops, and I'm always, I think it's a great blessing of where we are as actors to bond together and to be together and to hold each other in this community. And if we don't have independent film, then I really wonder, where is the future of our art? Because so much, I was at some award ceremony a while ago, and this actress came up to me, and she's a very well-known actress, like very, very well-known actress, and I just knew her through a friend, and we were just talking about independent film and my favorite subject, and she said that she felt like some of her best work had been on independent film and no one was ever going to see it. And I thought that was so incredibly telling and sad. And I think what we need to do, as actors and as people in this industry, is not only give of ourselves to the indie community, but to also hopefully, it's so great that you're all here tonight, and to support independent film and to demand the platforms for independent film that need to be there. And so, because you don't want to just show up every day of your life on a set where, no matter how much you have to shoot, you're going to get one or two takes. And, whether or not you feel good, bad, or indifferent. And so it's so exciting as an actor, they gave me an entire day to shoot one scene. And I mean, you just don't get that. And so it was so much fun. And it's so much fun to think that, you can use your process in the way you would like to use your process. And the director can get what they want. You can get what you want. The other actors can get what they want. Everybody can go out of the day feeling like, we've held each other artistically. And I just don't think you're going to get that in every aspect of what we do because of budgeting, because of all the very many concerns that people work with. So independent film is such a special force in how we may move forward in the purity and integrity of our art. And so I'm always so grateful to the challenge that people are taking on to do independent film, and I couldn't do it personally. And I applaud all of these independent filmmakers and all of you guys for doing what you do. And I think we all feel that way as actors,
And it should be noted that Kathy actually finished a 16-day shoot and flew back to New York to do that one-day shoot with us. Because she's a trooper and she's amazing. Thank you, Kathy.
So the topic of sexual assault and rape culture has never been, at least in my existence, more in the forefront of popular culture, the news, starting with our president, and most recently with the extreme amount of evidence mounting around Harvey Weinstein. With that, my question is to everyone, and it is, what is the hope for a film like The Light of the Moon as a combatant to that reality? Starting with Carlo Velayo, the lead producer.
Thank you, Michael. I think for me, what drew me to this project when Jess asked me to make an independent film about sexual assault about 3 years ago.
I was like, this is going to be easy. It's going to be a walk in the park.
That's right. We knew that it wasn't going to be a commercially viable or successful film. It wasn't going to be your Valentine's Day popcorn, drama, rom-com drama that you would take your partner to on Valentine's Day. But even then, back in 2014, Emma Solkowich's story came out at Columbia University, and we knew that there was this conversation that needed to be had. People were talking about it, there were murmurs here and there, but we didn't feel like there was enough dialogue. And I think for us, it was a matter of providing and contributing to that conversation, providing people with the vocabulary, the opportunity to have that conversation with family, with friends, with their community, giving people the opportunity to say, this has happened to me, or someone that I know, I want to talk about it. How do I talk about it? And hopefully this film provides that opportunity for people to start that dialogue.
Jess?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to, I think the hope, and with everything that's going on in the media, I do feel very hopeful that maybe our voices are finally being heard. And although it saddens me and breaks my heart every time I see another #MeToo post, I also still at the same time feel an element of hope that, maybe we're finally paying, attention and giving due notice to these people that have been craving this for so long, and that I think all women and men who are our allies to stand up and take notice and try to really change his career. And it's extremely prevalent, as you all know, in our industry. So I really wanted to make this film for people like my friend who went through this, to be like, to acknowledge that I see you. I know you're there. I know your story has not been shown fairly. I know that you feel like you can't get justice in the justice system, in the legal system, but maybe I can give you some justice by telling your story in, I hope, an honest and real and empathetic way. So that was really my main hope in making the film, and I do think we can turn it around. Otherwise, why get out of bed in the morning, right? But I do think that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think we will see a lot more change happen. I used to think that we just had to wait for the old white men to die. But now I'm starting to think, we can take them to the media and we can take them out there, so we can throw them to the wolves. So I don't know. I do believe that I love this industry. I love film. I fell in love with it when I was 12, and I've never wavered. And I do think we can make it a safe and loving and supportive industry for everybody. So,
I think you guys said it beautifully. I don't think I need to add to that.
I'll just say like one thing, which is that I recently discovered this TED Talk by this guy, Jackson Katz, and he talks about men's responsibility in this issue. Men are the ones doing the raping, for almost entire, yeah. And so even sexual assault, if it was just called men raping, people think it was a women's issue, which allow men to in some way say, I don't have to think about that. And the question of what is it gonna take for men to start to address not just sexual assault, but also rape culture? Because there is a line between harassment, catcalling, all these little gradations before you get to sexual assault that that are about a power dynamic, that are about objectification, however you want to think about it. And so, his TED Talk is about calling on men and framing it as a leadership issue. That if you're making a sexist comment, that's poor leadership. It's not just sensitivity. And I think that is an interesting way that could be appealing to men to frame it.
To frame them as the leaders.
Yep. Yeah. Because, there's a thing about decency, because of course, not being sexist is just basic decency. But who wants to aim for basic decency? In a way, right? We want to aim for, so I'm curious, and I don't have answers, but I'm even about what I can do or what other men can do in terms of not just being allies to women, but really addressing other men and saying, because there's a lot of condoning, just low-key kind of condoning, and it happens in a very subtle way. So as this film, goes to universities and gets out into the world, that's definitely a conversation I'm interested in having.
Kathy or Conrad?
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know. I love men. I love men. And I think I have an 11-year-old boy, and I don't know if anybody's experienced this, but he came home to me and he said that he had puberty class today, and I was like, what did you have today? And I was like, how did that go? Nobody told me that my son was having puberty class, and maybe I should have known. And I said, well, did they talk about, no means no and yes means yes, and don't overpower a woman. You are stronger than a woman. Did they talk about that? And my son was like, no, I didn't talk about that. And so I think it's also an education issue. And I remember there was an article that some mom wrote about her son who had raped a girl. And I have a son. And I thought, God, that mom, there's a mom out there with a son. And so I think we have to educate our children. And I think we have to start with our children. And we don't just tell them how it works. We tell them, we're not a caveman, he-man, agricultural society anymore. Google F you. Women are as powerful as men, but women physically may not be. And so boys have to be taught that in high school. Forget calculus. Let's get into, something that actually really works for human beings. That's what I say. Because it's not just boys. It's not always the fault. People learn. People have to evolve. And boys have to be taught. Boys have to be helped. They have to be taught. Good people don't necessarily always do the right thing. And there are boys who are good boys, but they're not being taught correctly. Take down your instinct. And I as a mother of a son, it is something that I am aware of,
So it's come up in test screenings of this film and in Q&As of this film. And I want to ask the audience, just from a show of hands, no judgments here, but at any point in this film, did you find yourselves judging the character of Bonnie? Did you find yourself judging her choices? Did you find yourself wondering why she was walking alone with headphones on, right? So thank you for your honesty. So about half the audience. So my question is for Jessica and Stephanie, which is, knowing that, can you talk about the decision to, show Bonnie so free and so full of life and having a wonderful night out just before this event, as opposed to jogging in broad daylight, not intoxicated, et cetera? What for you was important about that choice, and how was that relevant to Stephanie?
It was such a smart choice by you to write that in that way. I thought that from the get-go, because I remember reading it for the first time and thinking like, oh no, Bonnie, don't,
That's exactly
that's why you
I
put it in.
because I think the same thing, and this is how pervasive rape culture is that even the most liberal feminist still thinks like, oh, don't just have one less drink, or just, and I'm saying I specifically wrote her like that and wrote that scene like that because I wanted us to judge her, because we all are we all have unconscious bias. We all are at fault of this. And then once we realize what happened to her, judge ourselves or question ourselves for judging her and wonder, what is it about me that made me think that? And the reason why I kept mulling this over was there was a line that I read in, and I'm sorry, her name is escaping me right now, by a radio podcast host who is a rape survivor. And she said, there's always this line, what did she expect? There's always this well, what did she expect? She was drinking. What did she expect? She was wearing headphones. She was wearing a short skirt. What did she expect? And then, what did she expect? She drank so many drinks. And this woman said, I expected a hangover. And I just think that's what men do. Men go out and they can get shit-faced and they can wear whatever the hell they want. They could probably run around naked and no one will touch them, and they just come home and they think, I'm going to have to, sleep in tomorrow, and I'm going to have to, take some pain meds, and I'll, and that's the extent that they think of it. Yeah,
and bad things do happen sometimes to men as well,
absolutely.
like when they're in those situations, but most of the time it's not a rape.
Most of the time it's not sexualized.
And when my father came to see the film at South by Southwest, because I'm from Texas, and so my family was very excited to come to Austin, and my dad talked to me after the film, and we were all sitting around my hotel room, and my mom and dad were there, and my dad said, but he was like, hey, I want to talk to you about the film. I was like, okay. And he's like, but you don't wear your headphones when you're walking, right? You don't do that. And I was like, Dad, that's the point. The point is that scene. And then I said, if you are drunk and naked and passed out in the middle of the street, does anyone have the right to murder you? And my dad was like, of course not. And I was like, it's the same thing. Human beings should not murder each other, and human beings should not rape each other. It's the same. You should just not do it. And my dad sort of sat there stunned for a while, and but I could see him processing it. And he's he's almost 70 now. And I think the film really made him think about his own preconceived notions about what his two daughters are doing and living and how they're, functioning in the world.
So I think we're almost out of time. Yeah. Couple audience questions.
Okay,
Carlo?
so I've been given the pleasure of reading some questions out. The first question is from Noel to the leads. The relationship was so real. How did you establish the degree of intimacy that you did and feel comfortable with the sex scenes? Because it seemed very organic and natural.
We liked each other. Yeah, we got
along.
Michael called me before we shot the film because neither of us knew Jess's work either. And we were like, how do you think this is gonna go? Is she gonna be able to get all the coverage? We don't know, we didn't know her. And so even before we started shooting, I think we bonded over okay, we're in this together, and you look out for me and I'll look out for you,
Yeah. And then Jess did, give us time. We had a fair amount of rehearsal time and
Like 4 days.
yeah,
4 days.
like
or
four
something,
full
in in Bonnie and Matt's apartment.
Right, so in the space, which was amazing. She had us do this thing where we asked each other questions. Remember this from the New York
Yeah,
Times?
the 36 questions to fall in love. Have you read that article? So Jess had us not answer all of them, but we answered a few
Just a little bit
together.
manipulative. No.
And I think
Just a
you
little.
answered. Didn't you also answer?
You
I
answered
answered a
some,
few,
yeah.
Yeah.
We were falling in love with each other.
Yeah,
we were,
we
just
were
like,
like a team. We
and
were
I
really
do
a
feel like
team.
you have to bare your soul as a director. That's part. If you guys trust me and I trust you, and then I feel like that allows you to be comfortable with me and each other.
It was really just about sharing and opening up a bit and sort of feeling like, okay, can I open up? And we're good, we're safe, this is still
Yeah.
safe, this still feels okay, okay.
Yeah, and I think like both of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I like to be really open in my work. Like I really, which is strange if you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you know that character is not that at all. But like I really enjoy like pulling things apart and like cracking things open. And I think Michael is also that kind of actor. And I think we were just having a really good time, like being able to get in that relationship with those two people.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff actors like. It's like long scenes,
Not gonna cut. It's like a play.
Yeah,
It's like-
Jess was very much attuned to us. She was like really focused on us and giving us direction and working with us.
And
so.
then the other character really was the camera, which was Autumn Aiken behind the camera, who's an amazing director of photography. And like, she really like. Sometimes it was weird. It was like we knew she was there, and she'd be like right up in your face with the camera. But also, she's sort of like disappeared and gave us space. So the intimacy that you see is really because the two people that were in charge of capturing the intimacy, Jess and Autumn, were so respectful and so in tune with us as actors. Because I think a lot of times, like, you're trying to capture something intimate and, like, your camera guy's, like, doesn't give a shit or, like,
And I will say Autumn is here. And
Autumn's
she's
here,
an
isn't she
incredible
amazing?
DP.
Amazing.
And I will say that a lot of the reason why I chose Autumn was I saw she worked as a B camera operator on a documentary called Love Marilyn that I was the production manager and one of the editors on. And I was watching, I do this a lot. When you know you're bound to make a feature film, you're just like, oh, I'm gonna keep that crew member in my mind, and oh, there's that actor, I'm going to use them at some point. And I was watching her, and I saw that she was listening very intently to what the actors were saying in the scenes. That it was a narrative documentary, so there was acted scenes in it, and she was moving according. She was actually listening and paying attention and moving with the actors, and not overstepping them, and not. She could. She had a great impulse, and so I was like, she'd be perfect for this. While I've worked with, and not all male DPs are bad, but I've worked with a few where I'm like, he's not listening. He's just like doing what he thinks, and he's so focused on the lens, and he's so focused on the camera, and he's not actually just hearing the actors and their beats and their pauses and their breaths and where they're going to go. And she did that so well, and so I knew that she wouldn't intrude and that she would, stick to a certain level and be able to create that intimacy with me. So that was a big, I think, helped that as well. Yeah. And then also just having great actors. You just cast well, and then that helps.
Okay, so if we have time for just one more question, I'll follow suit with Michael's strategy of going down the line. I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, but Pangaea asks a question to all of the panel. After seeing the film, what do you wish people to take with them?
I think I kind of answered that before with that. I just feel that I hope that people feel like they're recognized and that they're seen, and that they that they feel like they've been heard and that they've been represented. I just got back from a month long of being on the road, of going to different film festivals like BFI London and things like that, and showing the film there. And it's just wonderful to speak to audiences and meet different audiences. And, after every film screening, there's, a line of people waiting to talk to me and open up to me and tell me their story and or say thank you, and that means the world to me, to feel like I've represented someone fairly. So I don't want to hope for, of course I want to change the culture, I want to do it, but I don't want to set those expectations too high. I just want to make people feel like they've been heard and represented. So.
Oh, you weird, like a storyteller or something. So weird. And I think we kind of answered that question already, right? Yeah. Do we want to do one more?
Do one more.
Do one more. Do one more. Do one more. Do one more, Carlo.
You want some little trivia?
A question for Stephanie. How do you alter your voice to be Rosa? You sounded nothing like her in this, and I wasn't even sure at first it was you, and I watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine weekly. I think that was religiously.
What a high compliment. Thanks, boo. I'll pay you later. I don't know. I mean, I think of myself more than like an ingenue. I think of myself as a character actress most of the time. So I think like what I'm doing is like shifting into somebody else's body, being, vibe, brain space. I mean, weirdly, there's a lot of Bonnie that is a lot like me. But for Rosa, I just literally I just push it down into a different register. That's like all I do. Like I just push it down. And then everything else is like the stuff that I always think about, which is like, how do I move in the space? How much space do I take up? Why do I need to take up that space? How do I cross my legs? How do I stand? Where do I put my hands? Like, what do I think about what everybody is saying and doing? And why do I choose these clothes? And like all the things that all actors do, you know? Yeah. I'm so glad you didn't recognize me. That's a really high compliment.
I've had a lot of
Thank you.
people say that.
I mean, that's not great for my career, but so if you could just do me a favor and like tweet about the movie and talk about us, thanks.
Just while we're finishing up, thank you so much for coming to this. Like you were saying, I mean, independent film is it's hard, right? I mean, there's so much screaming for your attention. We had not a lot of resources to spread the word about this movie, and so you're a big resource for us. Yeah. So
actors
this is your
listen to
guilt
other
trip.
Actors. They do.
But if you can like post about it, that would be incredible. If you can post a trailer, whatever you feel comfortable doing. We open November 1st at IFC, and we're hoping that we're going to sell that first week out, and that will give us the momentum to really have a theatrical run of this film. So.
Yeah. If you felt like it was an important film to see, then it is important for you to tell other people about it, because we are an indie film. So like your word of mouth could potentially make or break us. And it would be really great if you helped us make it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.